Hi, everyone. Just for those of you who may not know me, my name is Dr. Marshawn Warren, and I am both the Director of Human Resources and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the wonderful District 201.
And I'm Tiffany Draghi, member of the Racial Equity Committee and the Library Director at Belleville West.
Hello, I'm Ann Dulski. I am also a rec member and a French teacher at Belleville East and Belleville West.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about cultural proficiency and what that means to prepare us for the professional development moving forward with our cohorts next year.
Great. So what does cultural proficiency mean in education?
So cultural proficiency is the highest level of competence. So it is the personal values and behaviors of individuals and the organization's policies, practices that provide opportunities for interactions among students, educators, and communities.
Okay, so then why is working toward cultural proficiency so important in education?
There are so many ways to answer this question, but one of the most important reasons is having schools be successful for all students. And that's still a dream deferred for many. So as a result, we want to be engaged in providing success for all students and display a true commitment to the deeper values of access and equity. We continue to kind of hide behind the ability to be politically correct or use fashionable words and phrases to mask our ineffectiveness. And so we at District 201, we want to move past that.
So what are some of the steps we're taking as a district to reach the cultural proficiency you're talking about as an institution?
So to date, District 201 has acknowledged that systemic racism exists within our district and that change is non-negotiable. We've supported the formulation of a team of educators, the Racial Equity Committee, to be proactive and advise leadership on areas of diversity, equity, inclusion, and also justice. We've supported the use of the Cultural Proficiency Framework for professional development to build capacity for truthful conversations and close those access gaps. We've engaged in homegrown professional development, which allows for us to address our problems of practice or inequities from within through reflection, dialogue, and then action. And then we've also partnered with our community team. So that's the CARE Coalition, and CARE stands for Community Advocating for Racial Equity, to make meaningful change not only within District 201, but also in the Belleville community. And then last but not least, just on this list, we've worked with feeder schools to collaboratively engage in cultural proficiency training to support their initiatives, as well as promote the Belleville area community speaking the same language.
That's great. So then for us as individual teachers, what does the personal work of striving towards cultural proficiency look like? So like if I'm someone who's kind of nervous about doing this personal work, do you have any advice to offer?
Definitely. The personal work of cultural proficiency involves the individual's reflection on his, her, or their personal values and beliefs. Additionally, the cultural proficiency framework requires us to compose our own personal cultural autobiographies, which in turn informs a transformational action plan. The transformational action plan requires each person to consider where they stand in regard to interacting with people or cultures that are different from their own, as well as where they need to go to either improve or modify these interactions. I would also share that there's no need to be nervous as long as you authentically engage in the work. No one will read your reflections, your cultural autobiographies, or your transformational action plans. At some point, you may be willing to share elements of these documents during dialogue with colleagues or to support recommendations for future actions for change. However, this portion is truly personal. So to reiterate and to put it simply, I would advise everyone to just do the work. As a district, we'll have so many opportunities to review our policies, practices, and procedures as a result of applying the lens of cultural proficiency to our work as educators. And when those times come, we'll need as many people at the table as possible because true diversity and inclusion always produces exceptional outcomes.
Okay, so as an educator and a member of the greater community, what are some of the resources that I can explore to help me in this work? And are they available at school?
Each staff member, as a result of the training, will receive resources on cultural proficiency. You can also obtain a wealth of information from the web by just searching the term cultural proficiency in conjunctions with the author's names, which will be listed at the end of this presentation: Dr. Randall Lindsay, Dr. Dolores Lindsay, Dr. Raymond Terrell, and or Dr. Kakanza Nuri Robbins. And I can also forward resources to those who want to read ahead.
Great, thank you.
And so then can you tell us a little bit more about the cohorts that you mentioned?
Definitely. So as all of you know, this video is embedded in our self-sign-up tool. So our self-sign-up tool essentially is an opportunity for you to sign up to be in a cohort. Our cohorts will be mixed up between East and West, and there will also be paraprofessionals included in your cohorts. So we are asking that you complete the course of the next 4 years. So if you have time in fall 21 that you can dedicate to the cohort based on the information presented on the sign-up tool, please don't waste time. Go ahead and sign up. I encourage you. It will be a valuable experience. We will definitely experience a great deal of growth. And I think overall, it will bring us closer together as a 201 community. But, why don't you both of you tell me just kind of what your feedback is so far, just based on being in a cohort right now?
So participating in the cohort with the Racial Equity Committee, I found that this training is a little bit more personal than any of the other trainings I've ever done on similar topics in the past. So it's more about learning about myself, what my personal culture is, and my cultural makeup, and what that means for me as an educator and just as a person. So it's just, and I've really enjoyed it so far. It's difficult to examine myself and how I came to be the way I am now sometimes along the way. But the personal inspection is really been meaningful.
I agree, Tiffany. The personal reflection aspect of the training has been a wonderful step. And I also really appreciate that it's been nice to be in a safe space where everyone can learn from each other, and even then be able to talk about how what we're reflecting upon and looking critically at can apply to our practice in education.
And one of the activities specifically that meant a lot to me was examining our names, how we've experienced our names, what our names mean to us. And that's just something I've never really thought about before. But then kind of zooming out and how that looks for students and how they experience their names. Again, just going back to how it is truly the personal work that will move us forward. And so that's been a really cool experience. So then moving forward, what guidance can be provided on how to start to have some of these conversations with colleagues and students about these tough topics that are important to growth and cultural proficiency?
That's a great question. First, I would just advise people not to have a conversational gap, which is a function of educators not either having the perspective to see the roadblocks that have been, or the roadblocks that are currently impeding members of the non-dominant socioeconomic, racial, ethnic, gender, or language group. So in other words, ensure you have the capacity to understand what the real issue is before you attempt to resolve it. I would also recommend that if, after reflection, you don't feel you have the capacity to engage in these conversations, please reach out to me or a member of the REC for support.
And how do we identify certain classroom procedures or policies, as you were talking about, that could be areas for growth, although we may not see the need for change now as we go through the personal reflection process and group discussion? We will be prepared to and able to see what areas those are. But how could we identify that? Are there any kind of tips that you could provide for us?
Well, I will tell you, throughout the course of the professional development, we will collect data and we will apply behaviors, policies, procedures. All of the data that we collect, will apply it to the continuum. And so the continuum ranges from either culturally destructive all the way over to culturally proficient. So this will help us identify areas for growth and acknowledge where access gaps or barriers are present. Now, although the framework is not evaluative and it's also not meant for children or for students, We will be able to use the data's placement on the continuum and consequent activities to make recommendations for change. So this process alone may prompt individuals to make changes in their respective classrooms even before we come to the table to officially produce that action.
That's great. Well, thank you all for your time today. And we look forward to starting the work of cultural proficiency in our cohorts next year.
Thank you all.
Absolutely. Thank you.